modern media sits down with one of television's sharpest hosts, and absolutely everything goes wrong. In just 38 seconds, a casual question turns into the most explosive meltdown ever caught on camera, ending with security physically escorting a royal duchess out of the studio while cameras keep rolling. This is the story of the interview that was supposed to be a simple promotional appearance, but instead became the most talked about television disaster of the year. Greg Gutfeld sits behind his desk. The studio lights are hot. The audience is packed in tight, and everyone is expecting a typical late-night interview. Meghan Markle walks onto the stage wearing an expensive designer dress, waving to the crowd like she owns the place. The applause is polite, but not overwhelming. She sits down, crosses her legs, and immediately starts adjusting her microphone like something is wrong with it. Greg starts with a smile. "Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here." Meghan doesn't smile back. She just nods, still fussing with her microphone. "Well, I almost didn't come. Your team was incredibly difficult to work with." The audience goes quiet. Greg's smile doesn't fade, but his eyes narrow just slightly. "Oh, really? I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?" "Your producers kept asking me questions about what topics were off limits," Meghan says, her voice dripping with irritation. "I shouldn't have to explain myself to anyone. I'm doing you a favor by being here." Greg leans back in his chair, keeping his composure. "Well, we do that with every guest. It's pretty standard. We just want to make sure everyone's comfortable." "Comfortable?" Meghan laughs, but it's not a friendly laugh. "I don't need you to make me comfortable, Greg. I need you to respect who I am and what I've been through." The studio audience shifts uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody was expecting this kind of tension right out of the gate. Greg keeps his professional demeanor, refusing to take the bait. "Of course I respect you," Greg says calmly. "That's why I invited you on the show. I thought we could have a good conversation." Meghan waves her hand dismissively. "A good conversation? Is that what you call it when you spend every other episode making jokes about people like me?" "People like you?" Greg asks, genuinely confused now. "What does that mean?" "You know exactly what it means," Meghan snaps. "People who actually stand up for something. People who don't just sit behind a desk and mock others for cheap laughs." The audience is dead silent now. A few people exchange glances. This is getting uncomfortable fast. Greg takes a breath, still trying to keep things civil. "Meghan, I think there might be some misunderstanding here," Greg says, his voice still even and controlled. "I make jokes about everyone, including myself. That's what comedy is. But I didn't bring you here to argue. I brought you here because I thought my audience would want to hear what you have to say." Meghan leans forward, her eyes blazing. "Your audience? You mean the same audience that cheers when you tear people down?" "Ansese. The same audience that laughs when you make fun of people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world." Greg's expression changes slightly. He's still calm, but there's a firmness in his voice now. "I think you're painting with a pretty broad brush there. My audience is made up of people from all walks of life who just want to laugh and think critically about what's going on in the world." "Think critically?" Meghan's voice rises. "You call what you do thinking critically?" "You're a puppet, Greg. You say whatever your network tells you to say. You push whatever narrative keeps your ratings up." The audience gasps. A few people start murmuring. This has gone from uncomfortable to hostile. Greg sits up straighter in his chair, his jaw tightening just a bit. "That's not true and you know it," Greg says, his voice steady but firmer now. "I've built my career on saying exactly what I think, whether people like it or not. I don't read from a script and I don't bow to pressure." Meghan laughs again, that same cold, mocking laugh. "Oh, please. You're exactly like every other talking head on television. You pretend to be edgy and independent, but you're just another cog in the machine." Greg pauses, taking a moment to collect himself. The audience can see he's working hard to maintain his professionalism. He's not going to sink to her level. "Meghan, I'm going to be honest with you," Greg says. "Yeah, I'm for a conversation, not a confrontation." For a conversation, not a confrontation. Maybe that's your problem, Meghan fires back. You think everyone should just play nice and go along with your little show? Well, some of us have actual principles. Some of us don't just smile and nod when we're faced with hypocrisy. Hypocrisy? Greg asks. So for being elitist, for living in a bubble for being elitist, for living in a bubble. But look at you. You're on television making millions of dollars to give your opinions. How is that any different? Greg takes a breath, his patience clearly being tested. The difference is, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. I don't lecture people about compassion and understanding while I'm attacking them personally. I'm not attacking you personally, Meghan says, her voice sharp. I'm attacking your platform, your message, your entire worldview. Well, it sure feels personal, Greg responds, a slight edge creeping into his voice now. And honestly, I'm not sure what you're hoping to accomplish here. Did you come on this show just to tell me how terrible you think I am? Meghan sits back in her chair, crossing her arms. I came on this show because my publicist thought it would be good for my image. But now that I'm here, I realize this whole thing is beneath me. The audience audibly reacts to this. A few people actually boo. Greg's expression hardens. Beneath you? Greg repeats slowly. You know what, Meghan? If being on this show is beneath you, you're welcome to leave anytime. Maybe I will, Meghan shoots back. I don't have to sit here and be disrespected by someone like you. Someone like me? Greg's voice rises slightly for the first time. You've been insulting me and my audience from the moment you sat down. I've tried to be respectful. I've tried to give you space to say what you want to say, but all you've done is attack. Meghan stands up abruptly, yanking off her microphone. I don't have to listen to this. I thought you were a professional, but clearly I was wrong. Greg stays seated. Know why you're really upset. Why you're really upset. Why I'm really upset. Meghan's voice is shrill now. You want to know why? Because people like you make a living off tearing down people like me. You build your career on negativity and division, and then you act shocked when someone calls you out on it. People like you, Greg says quietly, need to understand that criticism isn't the same thing as tearing someone down. I've never attacked you personally. I've questioned some of your decisions, sure, but that's not a personal attack. That's commentary. That's what I do. Well, your commentary is garbage, Meghan spits out, and so is this show. The audience erupts. Some people are booing loudly now. Others are shouting. Greg holds up his hand, trying to calm everyone down. Okay, Greg says, his voice cutting through the noise. I think we've established that this isn't working out. Meghan, I appreciate you coming, but I think it's time for you to go. I was already leaving, Meghan says, but she doesn't move. She stands there, glaring at Greg, like she's waiting for him to say something else. Greg looks directly at her, his expression completely neutral now. Then leave. Meghan's face turns red. Excuse me? You said you were leaving, Greg repeats. So leave. And the door's right there. You can't talk to me like that, Meghan says, her voice shaking with anger. I just did, Greg responds calmly. And I'll say it again. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay and have an actual conversation, sit down and let's talk like adults. But I'm not going to sit here while you insult me, my show, and everyone watching. Meghan takes a step toward the desk, pointing her finger at Greg. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just dismiss me like I'm nobody? Greg doesn't flinch. I think you came on this show with an agenda. I think you wanted to create a scene. And congratulations, you succeeded. But I'm not playing this game anymore. This isn't a game, Meghan screams. This is my life. This is my reputation. Then maybe you should think about how you're representing yourself right now, Greg says quietly. Because this isn't a good look. Meghan's hands are shaking. Sit there in your seats, judging me, but sit there in your seats, judging me. But you have no idea what it's like to be scrutinized every single day. You have no idea what it's like to have people constantly criticizing everything you do. Someone in the audience shouts back, "Then stop doing stuff worth criticizing." Meghan whips around to face whoever said it. "Who said that? Who has the audacity to speak to me like that?" Greg stands up now, his voice firm. "Meghan, that's enough. You need to leave. Right now." "You can't throw me off the show," Meghan says, her voice rising to a near shriek. "I'm a guest. You invited me here." "And now I'm uninviting you," Greg says, his voice cold and final. "You're done. Please leave the stage." Meghan looks around wildly. "Niche I leave. Because someone who knows who they leave. Because someone who knows who they are should also know how to behave." Meghan takes another step toward the desk, and that's when two security guards appear from the wings. They don't touch her yet, but they position themselves on either side of her. "Don't you dare," Meghan hisses at them. "Don't you dare put your hands on me." "Nobody's touching you," one of the guards says calmly. "We're just here to escort you out." "I don't need an escort," Meghan snaps. "I can walk out on my own." "Then please do," Greg says from his desk. "We're all waiting." Meghan stands there for a long moment, her chest heaving, her fists clenched at her sides. The entire studio is silent except for the hum of the cameras. Everyone is watching, waiting to see what she'll do next. Finally, Meghan turns on her heel and starts walking toward the exit, but she only makes it a few steps before she spins back around. "You're going to regret this," she says, pointing at Greg. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have more influence than you could ever dream of. I can destroy you." Greg sits back down in his chair, completely unfazed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," Meghan says, her voice venomous. "Well, I'll add it to the list of all the other promises people have made about destroying me," Greg says with a slight shrug. "So far, I'm still here." Meghan's face contorts with rage. She opens her mouth to say something else, but no words come out. She's shaking with fury, unable to form a coherent sentence. The security guards gently step closer. "Ma'am, it's time to go." "Get away from me," Meghan shouts, jerking away from them. "I said I can walk on my own." But she doesn't walk. She just stands there, frozen, like she physically can't bring herself to leave without having the last word. Greg watches her calmly, waiting. The audience watches. The cameras keep rolling. "You know what your problem is?" Meghan finally says, her voice breaking slightly. "You think you're better than everyone else. You think you have all the answers, but you're just a bully with a microphone." Greg doesn't respond. He just looks at her, his expression unreadable. "And say something," Meghan demands. "Defend yourself." "Why?" Greg asks simply. "You've already made up your mind about me. Nothing I say is going to change that." "Because you know I'm right," Meghan says triumphantly. "You know everything I'm saying is true, and you can't handle it." Greg leans forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Meghan, I'm going to give you one piece of free advice. When you walk out of here, and you will walk out of here, and take some time to think about what just happened. Think about how you came onto this show, how you behaved, and how you're leaving, and ask yourself if this is really who you want to be." Meghan's eyes fill with tears, but they're tears of rage, not sadness. "How dare you lecture me? How dare you sit there and act like you're somehow morally superior?" "I'm not claiming moral superiority," Greg says quietly. "I'm just trying to have a conversation." "But you're not interested in a conversation. So you're interested in a fight, and I don't fight with guests." "That's because you're a coward," Meghan spits out. The audience boos loudly. Someone shouts, "Get out!" Others join in. The whole studio is chanting now. "Get out! Get out! Get out!" Meghan looks around at the hostile crowd, her face pale beneath her makeup. She realizes she's lost them completely. Whatever sympathy anyone might have had for her is gone. Fine, she says, her voice barely audible over the chanting. Fine. I'm leaving, but this isn't over. She turns and walks toward the exit, the security guards following close behind. But just before she reaches the door, she stops one more time. You'll be hearing from my lawyers, she calls out over her shoulder. Greg doesn't respond. He just watches as she finally disappears through the exit. The door closes behind her with a heavy thud. The studio erupts in applause. The audience is on their feet, clapping and cheering. Greg sits at his desk, taking a long, deep breath. He looks drained but composed. He waits for the applause to die down before speaking. Well, he says, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That was interesting. The audience laughs, the tension finally breaking. I genuinely didn't see that coming, Greg continues. I really did invite her here to have a normal conversation. I had questions prepared. I was ready to listen. But sometimes things don't go according to plan. He pauses, now running a hand through his hair. Look, I don't take pleasure in what just happened, Greg says, his voice serious now. I don't enjoy confrontation for the sake of confrontation, but I'm also not going to be disrespected on my own show. I'm not going to let anyone, no matter who they are, come in here and insult my audience, insult my team, and insult the work we do. The audience applauds again. We treat our guests with respect, Greg says. We really do. We give them a platform. We listen to what they have to say, and we engage with their ideas. But respect has to go both ways. And what you just saw was someone who came in here without any intention of showing respect. He looks directly into the camera. I hope she's okay, Greg says, and he sounds genuine. I really do. Because that level of anger, that level of hostility, it comes from somewhere, and it's not healthy. But that's not my responsibility to fix. My responsibility is to this show, to this audience. Back, we'll try to get back to normal. Or back, we'll try to get back to normal. Or whatever passes for normal around here. The cameras cut away as the show goes to commercial. Backstage, Meghan is reportedly still arguing with security, refusing to leave the building. Her publicist is on the phone, frantically trying to do damage control. So production assistants are running around, trying to figure out what to do with the rest of the show. Back in the studio, Greg stands up and walks over to the audience. He shakes hands with people in the front row, thanks them for being there, asks if they're doing okay after what they just witnessed. He's completely calm now, back to his normal self. Someone in the audience asks him if he knew that was going to happen. Not at all, Greg says with a laugh. If I'd known, I would have prepared better material. The audience laughs with him. Another person asks if he thinks Meghan will actually sue. Greg shrugs. I have no idea. But if she does, she does. I stand by everything I said and did. I was respectful until the very end. I gave her every opportunity to have a civil conversation. She chose not to take it. The break ends, and the show continues. Greg does his best to move on, to get back into the flow of things. He has other segments prepared, other topics to discuss. But everyone knows that this is the moment that will define this episode. This is what people will be talking about tomorrow. In the control room, the producers are already pulling clips, getting them ready to upload. They know this is going to go viral. They know every news outlet in the country is going to be covering this. This is the kind of moment that doesn't happen very often on live television. As the show winds down, Greg addresses the incident one more time. I know we're going to get a lot of reaction to what happened earlier, he says, and I just want to say that I stand by how I handled it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I simply asked her to leave when it became clear that she wasn't interested in having a productive conversation. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. In this business, you meet all kinds of people, Greg continues. Some are great, some are difficult, and some are impossible. Tonight, We met someone who was impossible, and that's okay. We handled it, we moved on, and we're going to be just fine. The audience gives him one final round of applause as the show ends, and just like that, it's over. The cameras stop rolling, the lights dim, the audience files out, buzzing with excitement about what they just witnessed. They pull out their phones, texting friends and family, posting on social media about the craziest television moment they've ever seen in person. Or Greg sits at his desk for a moment after everyone leaves, just processing. His producer comes over and pats him on the shoulder. "You handled that perfectly," the producer says. Greg nods slowly. "I just did what felt right. Kept my cool, stayed professional, didn't take the bait." "Most people would have lost it," the producer says. "She was trying to provoke you." "I know," Greg says. "That's exactly why I didn't give her what she wanted. The moment I would have gotten angry or defensive, she would have won. She would have been able to play the victim. But instead, she made herself look bad, all on her own." He stands up, stretching. He's exhausted. This wasn't how he thought his night would go. "Come on," the producer says. "Let's get out of here. Tomorrow's going to be insane." And it was. The next morning, clips of the confrontation are everywhere. Every news website has it on their front page. Social media is exploding with reactions. Some people defend Meghan, claiming she was set up or provoked. But the vast majority side with Greg. They watched the same footage everyone else did, and they saw a host who tried his best to be respectful in the face of completely unreasonable hostility. The video of Meghan's final moments on the show, when she's being escorted out by security, while screaming about lawyers and influence, becomes one of the most watched clips of the year. People make memes out of it. They create remixes. It becomes a cultural moment that defines both of their public images. For Greg, it's a validation. He handled a difficult situation with grace and professionalism. He didn't stoop to her level. He maintained his dignity while standing his ground. His audience respects him more than ever. The confrontation becomes legendary in television history. It's studied in media classes as an example of how to handle a hostile guest. It's referenced in other interviews, other shows, other contexts. It becomes the standard by which all other television meltdowns are measured. And through it all, one thing remains clear. When Meghan Markle walked onto that stage, she thought she was going to dominate the conversation, control the narrative, and put Greg Gutfeld in his place. Instead, she revealed exactly who she was to millions of people watching. She showed her entitlement, her hostility, her inability to handle even the mildest pushback. Greg, on the other hand, showed exactly what a professional host should be: calm under pressure, respectful even when disrespected, firm but fair. He didn't win by attacking. He won by simply being the adult in the room. That 38 seconds when Meghan first snapped at Greg about his team being difficult, that was the moment everything changed. That was when the mask slipped. That was when the real personality came out. And once it started, there was no stopping it. The anger, the contempt, the sense of superiority, it all came pouring out in an